everybody. Are we live? Are we on? Well, first of all, thank you all for joining us tonight. We're really excited to have this conversation. It could not be more timely and more pressing. I am Daphne Oz. I am a television host, most recently of MasterChef Junior. I'm an author, a mom of 4, and co-host of the PureWow podcast, Mom Brain. So definitely come check us out if you are looking to find some mom friends who are all just winging it together. And I am so pleased to be moderating tonight's Self-Care is Healthcare Roundtable, brought to you by PureWow and Mucinex to help separate fact from fiction and to offer some great strategies, you guys, for how to keep you and your family safe during this cold plus flu plus COVID season plus holiday. It is all of it happening all together. And so thrilled to be joined tonight with an incredible panel for you guys. We are, you can see them up here on the screen. Everybody wave when I say your name, please. We have Dr. Cassie Majestic. She is an emergency physician. Hi, Cassie. Hello. And by the way, we had a little chat. The doctors have asked that I call them by their first names to keep it all very friendly in here. So it's weird for me, but I'm going to call everybody by their first name. We have Dr. Ian Smith. He is the TV personality host of The Doctors and best-selling author. Hi, Ian.
Hey.
And we also have Dr. Jennifer Caudill. She is a family medicine physician. Hi, Jen. Hi. Okay, so we are going to dive right into it because there is so much to cover here and I can't wait. I do, because we are talking about medical issues, just want to give you a couple quick disclaimers. First up, the views, information, advice, and opinions expressed during this event are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of Mucinex or RB Health. I'm reading it here, obviously. The primary purpose of this video is to educate and inform and does not constitute medical advice or services. Please seek a doctor's advice if you have any questions. And last, Mucinex is not indicated for the treatment, care, or prevention of COVID-19. Please seek a doctor's advice if you have any questions on that. So, guys, it is 4 days before Christmas. We are in the midst of holiday time. Everybody is obviously thinking about this year being a little different, a lot different than most of our recent memories. Give us some ideas for how we can safely approach the holidays this year. What can we be doing to just take good care of our health? How about Ian? Why don't you jump on that first?
Yeah, I know, this is such a unique time and probably and hopefully the only time we're going to have a holiday season like this. So the first thing I would say to people, the first tip is to be realistic and don't use previous years as the benchmark of comparison for what this year should be or what it can be. Mm-hmm. We have to accept where we are and things are different, but we can still make the most of it. So number one, accept where we are. Don't compare it to last year. Number two is really work on your stress. For a lot of people, holidays are very stressful times. And given COVID on top of all the other issues that have come from the pandemic, these are really stressful times for a lot of people. So find a way to reduce your stress, whether it's finding alone time, doing something that you really enjoy every day of the holiday season for at least an hour. I mean, really get into your comfort zone and do something that's going to help mitigate and reduce your stress. Next, make sure you don't overindulge. We tend to look at holidays as kind of a license to go and kind of do everything we want as much as we want because it's for a short period of time. And in reality, when you overindulge, it kind of can lead to other things. So, do things in moderation. Have fun for sure. We don't want to be a killjoy, but definitely do it in moderation. And the last thing I want to say is that people have to understand what is important to them. I mean, really make the holiday season about priorities that are meaningful, that are purposeful, and that bring you happiness. And don't get stuck into the commercialism or the need to think that you have to acquire things during the holiday season. Spend time with loved ones in a safe way, obviously, but enjoy that kind of intimacy with those who you love and care about.
I love a couple of things about what you said. And I should just say, this is a conversation. Everybody should feel free to chime in if there's something that really resonates with you or you have a different idea. But something you said that I stuck out, 2 things actually. One was the comparative piece. I do think that when you said that, it's so true. It's thinking back on everything the way that past years have looked. That's what's going to rob you of the joy of whatever you might be able to find in this year. And exactly to your point about commercialism, it's like this, as so much of this year has been, is an opportunity, if we look at it this way, to reevaluate what was it that actually made me smile, that actually gave me great memories, that actually stuck with me and made me feel good inside, and how can I capture those? And a lot of those are still available to us. I think that's really powerful advice. Another, sort of topic is if you're traveling, if you're, taking on, additional exposures, if you're not able to stay at home, there are some preventative measures that can be taken. There are some ways that you can still stay safe. Cassie, do you want to handle this one and give us some ideas on that in case that's something people are contending with this year?
Yes. So I don't know if you guys have heard this enough, but wash your hands. Wash your hands. It is going to keep you healthy. And sanitizing is great too. So if you can't wash, make sure you carry a little sanitizer packs with you everywhere you go, and do it, as frequently as you can. Avoid touching high touch surfaces anytime that you're outside of your household. So obviously, if you're at the grocery store shopping for Christmas dinner, just wash as soon as you're done. But if you're flying, we recommend not traveling, obviously, this holiday. But if you have to, maybe travel by car. If you're flying and going through the airport, just don't touch all those things that you might normally touch without second thought. Wear your mask. This is going to be huge this year. So we know that COVID-19 in particular is spread mostly by respiratory droplets. And so wearing your mask is going to help protect you and others. And follow the CDC recommendations for getting a flu shot also.
Good. I think it's in some ways all the things that we're now doing, the cleaning of the high touch surfaces so frequently, and businesses are making such an effort to comply and to keep us safe. And I am really hopeful that if you are in those situations, you're able to stay really healthy still because of these preventative measures. But they're kind of things like, in some ways you wish, certainly as a mom of 4, where I feel like I'm constantly, my kids are touching everything, eating everything. It's so filthy. I'm so grateful that everything is like just a bit cleaner as a general statement. Okay, so we wanted to have a little fun. And we thought we would play a game of true or false, like the old wives' tale edition. So we're going to throw out some old wives' tales relating to sickness and health. And we want the doctors to weigh in on if they're true, if they're false, if they're totally crazy. And this is kind of also a fun way to take in some great information that I think all of us are going to hold on to, because I bet all of you have heard these told to you by a mother, a grandmother in the past, and probably believe a lot of them to be true. I know I did. Okay, so the first one: starve a cold, feed a fever. Jen, true, false? Totally crazy.
That's false. And I always say to my patients, I don't want you starving anything. We don't want any starvation happening around here. So, this idea of feeding a cold and starving a fever, I'm not sure where it came from, but it certainly is an old wives' tale. I say, make sure that you stay hydrated, make sure that you stay properly nourished. That's really the name of the game.
Okay. Solid. Why was it starve a cold? Why was that ever like, do you know why what was the origin of that at all?
I'm not sure where that came from. I don't know, but it's kind of like a lot of these sort of, things, sometimes they're origins, sometimes they're not. So I'll have to take a look and see if I can find the origins of it, but I'm not sure.
I'm so fascinated by those origin stories of like where this all came from. The one person that found it to be true and then it became fact. Okay, this is something, as a chef, as someone who has cooked a lot of chicken soup in my lifetime and eaten a lot of chicken soup in my lifetime, I definitely believe to be true. Chicken soup is penicillin. It will always heal you. True, fact, crazy. Cassie, what do you think about that one?
I mean, it's not totally crazy. There are some properties in chicken soup that are beneficial for your immune system. They help support the immune system with micronutrients and macronutrients. So it's not totally crazy, but it's not going to heal you either. I will say too that the steam from chicken soup can be kind of like a natural therapy for congestion. So it's not totally crazy, but it's not true either.
It's not as good as antibiotics, but sometimes it does make you feel really good though. And I always add tons of garlic into mine, tons of ginger. I do, it's about feeding the soil and then also treating the sickness. So I think that's a big part of it. And honestly, anything you can anything you can take down when you're feeling bad is a good thing. Okay, this is a really interesting one because it's definitely something I was told a lot as a kid, and I think a lot of us probably were. If you go outside with a wet head in winter, you will get sick. You'll catch a cold. Ian, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you don't. I can't see very long hair on your head, but I think you know. Anyway.
But there was a day. Trust me, there was a day. I had a big old fro. That is false, and I don't mean to go against all of our parents and grandparents over the years.
I know.
Yeah, the reason that they believe that, and this will be maybe another wives' tale, was because the belief was that we tend to lose a lot of heat through our hair and our head. And so the idea is if your hair is wet, then you're going to get your body really, really cold, and that's going to give you a cold. But it doesn't work that way, actually. What happens is your body gets a cold from a virus, just like COVID. And you don't get cold because it's cold outside. You get cold because during the winter months when it's cold outside, we tend to be indoors more often. And when we're indoors more often and not outside and not moving around, we increase our exposure to other people who may be sick. So, the idea of a cold head and it being winter and getting more sick is just not the case. Think about it. When you're in the summer and you jump into a pool and get out of a pool, you don't say, oh my goodness, you have a wet head, you're going to get sick because it's summer and it's warm out. So people make the association that you shouldn't have a wet head during the winter months because it's cold. It's going to give you a cold, and it just doesn't work that way.
Well, that's very good to hear because I feel like I flouted that rule a lot of times and I felt sort of guilty about it, but that's good. How about this one? Because this is something that I certainly tell my kids, avoid dairy if you have a cold. Thoughts on whether that's true, Cassie?
Well, I know that the theory behind that was that dairy can increase your mucus production or your congestive process, basically. And there have actually been studies done since we thought that don't show any association with dairy and worsening of a cold or mucus production at all. So we know that sometimes when we feel ill and we have maybe stomach cramps in association with a cold, that we may not tolerate dairy as well, but it's not really proven to worsen your cold or your mucus production. So that one's false also.
And I want to jump in here and say that actually, if you can tolerate dairy has a lot of great nutrients, vitamins, calcium, minerals. So, the idea of excluding a whole category like dairy is just not, it just doesn't work. Like I said, unless you have an allergy, let's say, for example, you have an intolerance to lactose. But I really think that people should think about dairy in a positive way rather than think that it's like this evil enemy.
Eat up.
Well, no, I don't need to wax poetic for all of you, but my love of dairy and all of its byproducts, cheese primarily. But I'm curious, just because what I'd always heard with regards to that was because of the potential for dairy to create inflammation in the body, and that you were trying to limit inflammation. And the same was true of sugar, that it was creating an acidic environment and it was creating inflammation. Do you think that the same is true of sugar if you're sick? Should you avoid it? Is it really not impactful?
Well, the thing about sugar is that there definitely have been studies that have shown that sugar can actually weaken your immune system. So there's a real positive relationship between the amount of sugar you consume and whether or not it has a weakening effect of your immune system, which is what you don't want to happen, obviously, when you're sick. But I think that when it comes to dairy and what you previously mentioned, I think a lot of this is theoretical, but there's a difference between theory and in-world reality and practice. And so when it comes to the dairy part of it, I don't see that as much of a threat. But for sure, sugar, we want to be careful of sugary beverages and excessive sugared foods because it can, have an effect on your immune system.
Okay. So this is really an appetizing one, but a very valuable one as someone who's looking for, signs and symptoms. And I know a lot of us are paying really close attention to anything we see or feel going on with our body these days. Clear snot equals viral. Green mucus equals bacterial. Is this a thing? Is this an accurate description of, can your snot predict whether you're sick or not and what you're sick from?
I'll take this if you don't mind. So I think that where this came from is that historically speaking, kind of back in the day, when people had serious bacterial infections, the mucus tended to be either green or yellow tinged. And so it kind of set this thing of, well, if it's green or yellow, it's bacteria. If it's something like a little bit of a cold or something like that, it's going to be clear. So viral is clear. Well, in some cases that holds true, but in a lot of cases, viruses can give you a colored discharge and vice versa. Bacteria can give you clear discharge. So using that as the general rule for sure, that if it's colored, it's bacterial. If it's not colored, it's viral, is not the way to go, but it's kind of more of a guideline, historically speaking, of whether or not you see it that way. But remember, viruses and bacteria can cause different colors, clear or colored, both can do it. So you can't decide emphatically it's one or the other based just on the color.
Shoot, if only it were that easy. I thought we thought we had a guaranteed outcome there. Okay, well, this was good. I mean, this is really good because I think a number of these that certainly I felt were absolutely true. Have a little nuance to the story. So we want to pivot now in this conversation to something that I think is top of mind. Well, it should be top of mind, I should say, and unfortunately falls to the back burner for a lot of people, which is self-care. And especially in this particular season, and given the duration and the length of this time, taking good care of ourselves and learning to find those little ways and those little places that are really materially going to benefit your life and that you'll be able to stick with in a meaningful and impactful way has been really valuable for me. And I think will be really valuable for everybody tuning in tonight. So we want to talk about self-care and your best strategies for finding ways to do it. Let's open it up broadly. How do we define self-care? What does it mean? And why is self-care something we should all be thinking and focusing on? Jen, why don't you jump in on that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so when I think about self-care, I really think about, how it is that we take care of our mind, body, and spirit. It's not just our body, right? But our mind is equally as important. Our spirit is as well. And I think if we didn't know that before the pandemic, this pandemic has certainly taught us a lot about taking care of all of these aspects of our being. And I think this looks differently for different people. I mean, certainly the body part, I don't want to say that taking care of your body is the easiest, but it may be the one that we talk about the most, right? Eating healthy and exercising and sort of, going to the doctor and doing the right things for our body. But when we talk about our mind, first of all, we don't always talk about our mind. And I think that's especially important given this pandemic. We're literally living in this time of flux and change where, we're losing people to COVID. We're not able to spend time with our loved ones and our family. Dr. Ian talked about in the beginning, what do we do this holiday? And actually I wanted to jump in on that a little bit too, because for the holidays, Daphne, in our last conversation, you had mentioned something I loved, which is this idea of creating new traditions, right? We're in this state of flux where we have to basically change everything around. So, how is it that we connect with people, that we avoid loneliness, that we still stay in tune, that our mind stays healthy? And then spiritually, which also doesn't get a lot of talk, right? Whether that's church or whether that's meditation or whether that's, whatever it is you do to spiritually find your core and your center. But all of these things are things that we have to invest in and take care of and look after. And I think it looks different for everyone, which is exactly how it should be. But I think we need permission and a reminder to do these things because, especially during this time of the pandemic, I mean, we need all of this more than ever,
Yeah, it's, I think I certainly feel like I've gotten busier than I've ever been before. So it can feel really challenging to find a peaceful moment or several moments to isolate, to just do that little check-in, that little inventory of where did I feel best in my day today? What activity that I'm doing consistently is making me feel the best, and what's making me feel the worst? I know a lot of families sit around a dinner table, even if you're doing this by Zoom, and do like rose and thorn of the day, right? Where they do, what's the highlight of your day? I love this. I want to start, my kids are little, but I want to start doing it with them. what's the highlight of your day? That's the rose. What's the thing you would have changed about your day or done differently? And that's the thorn. And what I think is super powerful about that framing is it keeps you in the driver's seat always. It's not like what's a negative thing that happened to you today. It's what did you do that you would have liked to have done differently? Because I think as humans, we are creatures of habit, and it can be easy to fall into self-perpetuating and fulfilling negative cycles, and to find and feel active, feel proactive, feel agency that we can create something different as an outcome is really, really powerful. An activity I feel like I should rein in and change is, sometimes I'll be scrolling the gram and like there's that new shop function and it feels all too easy to impulse buy things that I really don't need, but like it knows that I need, which is super free. Like I bought like a lumbar support system the other day. Ridiculous. Anyway, not to bore you with my specific weird shopping things, but if I can pry into your private lives for a moment, I do think that impulse buying is up. I do think that, that it has, for better or worse, it is a coping strategy for many people when it has been as draining of a year as it has been. And I'd love to know what your guilty impulse buy was. Anyone want to volunteer?
Oh, I'll definitely volunteer for that one. I think that it started out like most other people that I know, tie-dye sweatsuits, like that was huge in 2020. I know you have one. And skincare. It started out with those two. And then it turned into a puppy, which I know is also here. Yes. So we added a second little French bulldog puppy to our family. So nice. An impulse buy, I guess, sort of, but
that's a necessary addition to the family. So fun.
I have to say that I thought the sweat pants and sweatsuit thing was just me. I never wore sweatpants. I didn't even own any. I didn't own any sweatpants before this. I got like 6 sets, matching sets. And and I don't know what COVID is doing to me, but like literally I'm always in the market for a new pair of sweatpants and a matching top. It's crazy. So
I gotta say I was just the opposite actually. I have really enjoyed not spending and purchasing, except for obviously food and gas. But I have felt so much relief of not feeling like I have to buy things. I don't know how to say it. It's been a very liberating experience for me not to feel that compulsion. And I don't even think about it. Like I see some shoes, okay, cool, but do I really need them? Do I really want them? And I think that it really has helped me beyond saving money. It's really helped me say, okay, this is the stuff I really need. This is the stuff I don't need. Now, what are some things that I wish, I'm a car guy, so I like classic cars. So, you just don't go shopping for classic cars. So I'm lucky that I don't have a.
I was going to say that's a bigger purchase than the sweatpants.
That's right. So for me, it's like, I don't want to spend money on something that big, so I don't really have much to purchase. So anyway, but yeah,
I get it. You're an all or nothing kind of guy. You're like, either I want the car or just leave the sweatpants. No, I totally hear you. And that is absolutely true. But it's like you said, the face care, the skincare, the things that you're focusing on because you're at home more, and you want to be comfortable more. And all the Zoom calls we're on, the sweatpant bottoms come in really handy. And then you just have a gorgeous, blazer to put on top. Okay, well then, Ian, since you weren't indulging in impulse buying, perhaps you'd like to share some of your food indulgences, because something else that's been coming up a lot. And I made a really big commitment at the start of quarantine to, I was joking with myself, like, there's no reason we can't all come out of this time with our best bodies yet. Like, we have this, you stopped commuting, you stopped having some of the time drains on your day that really gave you back little moments in your life. Now, I said that at the beginning, and then it cut to, life got so much more crowded and busier and more chaotic, and it was harder to find little buckets of time to budget for self-care and for physical exercise and to counterbalance all the eating indulgence we were doing than I thought. But what has really worked for me was breaking down sort of like 10-minute quick hit workouts. So I will do really intense cardio for 10 minutes at a time. And sometimes it's only once a day. Sometimes it's twice a day. If I'm lucky, I get it 3 times a day, and it's broken up over the course of the time. And 10 minutes is a really manageable bucket to find. So I've been trying to steer clear of the, the corn, what do they call it? The corn 15, right? Now the corn, I don't even know. There's all kinds of jokes about the 15 pounds everyone's gaining, or the COVID-19 that everyone's gaining. And I'm curious if there's one food indulgence that you've been going to town on, or if you, similarly to your shopping reining in, like you also have not been overindulging either.
Okay, so Daphne, I love everything you said, by the way. Everything you said you're spot on with this. Let me first answer the quick question, which is my overindulgence. Well, I love to bake, by the way, and I know you're a foodie, but I love, my favorite is sweet potato pie. My own recipe.
So good.
Yes, and I've already challenged Patty LaBelle to a bake-off.
Oh, just casual, just Patty. Just challenge you to a bake-off.
But anyway, so I love sweet potato pie, and I love baking in general. I make homemade chocolate chip cookies. I make brownies. So I make cakes. So I love baking. Okay. I've been like that since I was a little kid. I've loved baked goods from going to church and the bake sale. So and my Instagram, by the way, at Dr. Ian Smith, spell the doctor out, Ian Smith, you'll see my sweet potato pie. And I'm
going there immedially.
Yeah, check it out.
Wait.
But you'll also see, speaking of what you just said about the HIIT workouts, and by the way, for everyone watching, HIIT is HIIT. High intensity interval training, which means burst of intense energy and then rest or lower energy, then burst again. So you oscillate between going hard to soft, hard to soft. So on my Instagram page, Daphne, I do exactly what you said. I give people little workouts they can do right at home in the burst fashion, 10 minutes. I agree with you. 7 to 10 minutes. Everyone has 7 to 10 minutes, right? And if you can give it your all for those 7 to 10 minutes in the morning, and do another 7 to 10 minutes in the afternoon or evening, that really will bookend your day as far as getting this nice little workout in. So I want to encourage people to check those exercises. And you don't need equipment, by the way. You don't need a gym or trainers. You can do it right at home. I also want to mention, though, you said that in the beginning of COVID, your idea was this is a great time to come out of it in a better shape. And I said in the very beginning of this, now, obviously, I'm a fitness nutrition guy, so this is my thing, but I said to people, guys, listen, we don't know how long we're going to be in this. We can't really control it. It's not in our individual control. It's in our collective control. Let's make the most of it. How many times do we say, I'm so busy at work, I have to commute back and forth to work, I don't have time to work out? Guys, now we're home. This is the time to eat better, to cook, to try some new recipes, to work out. And so I really believe, and I had a book that came out in April called Mind Over Weight, which basically talks about how weight loss and weight management really starts, above the neck. It's really in here, 80%. And so I want to challenge people, even though luckily and hopefully we're at the end of this tunnel, we still have a while to go. Take the next 3 or 4 months and really focus on those projects. And don't try to do too much too fast, but set little milestones for yourself that you want to accomplish, and go step by step by step, so that when we get out of this, you're going to be like, wow, this is the new me. I have a new lifestyle and I look and feel great.
What I'm so on board. I can't wait to go check out your sweet potato pie recipe. And I feel really in sync with, I wanted to talk to you guys about winter blues. It's December. People are deep into being at home, which and dark days and shorter days and all of it. And something you said that I think is so key is the from the neck up is your biggest hurdle to clear. And it's so often the hardest one, because it's so easy to talk yourself out of doing things that are really good for you. It's so easy to talk yourself out of making new habits and new good choices. But I think that when I start my day with that 10 minutes, and even if that's my only 10 minutes, I start it and get it done with, it makes my day more productive, more proactive. I feel so accomplished just from sticking with that one little ritual that I've set for myself. And that mindset carries through the rest of your day in a shockingly powerful way. So I challenge anyone listening to try it for a week. Just see if you like it for a week and see how it goes. But let's talk about some other winter blues combat strategies. Cassie, why don't you jump in on what's your takeaway and what's your advice for people who are just feeling really exhausted by the winter right now?
Well, I think similar to what both Ian and Jen said, it's, there's a physical and a mental component to all of that. Of course, if you live in cold weather also, and with daylight savings time, it's dark at, 4:45 these days. So it can be really hard to want to jumpstart anything after that time. And you still have so much of your day left. So
Right.
I think from a couple different standpoints, health, nutrition, and diet, it's huge. I think we in America in particular underestimate how important that is in giving us a energy and giving us a good, mental perspective. So what I like to tell a lot of patients is to make sure you're incorporating a lot of color into your diet. So for dinner, for example, if you're having something like spaghetti, which most of my patients love, maybe just add some spinach to it. That's easy. And then maybe make a zucchini noodle instead of pasta. So incorporating color into your diet, if you look at it that way, can be a lot easier than thinking to yourself like, oh, I have to make this big meal or this complicated, vegetarian something. Like, no, we can incorporate fruit and veggies into our lives in so many easy ways. So starting simple there with, nutrition and diet and what we're putting into our bodies, especially in the winter, is super important. I think outside of that, avoiding excessive alcohol is really important. Alcohol can make us feel slow and sleepy. And it doesn't provide a whole lot of nutritional support for our immune system. So those two things, and then just staying active, even if that's just with your kids. Daphne, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, doing activities with your kids is a way to stay active. And there's so many, great online workouts, like you said, like little 10-minute workouts or things to keep your mind active, meditation, yoga. So you can do all of those things, even in just a short little span of your day, and it can really help combat all of those winter blues you might be feeling.
And also the endorphins, right, Cassie? Because the idea is that when you exercise or you participate in some, moderate physical activity, you release these chemicals in your body that are called endorphins, and these are the body's natural happy chemicals. So when you talk about kind of combating winter blues, there's no better way to start your day with movement that gets you good. And like Daphne, like you said, and it really can last you beyond the workout and kind of put your body and your mind in a positive frame.
I love it. That's why I got to do it. It does. It resets my brain. It resets my whole thinking for the day. Jen, do you have any ways that you like to stay energized if you feel like you're hitting a slump or you feel like they were saying that you're just tired. It gets dark and then your body almost automatically starts to feel like, oh, it must be bedtime and it's 3 p.m. Any fun or favorite energizing techniques you might have?
I think, I really agree with Cassie and Ian. I think for me, movement really helps. I tend to be one of these when it's 3 p.m. and it's dark. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're done. And I will happily get on the couch with a blanket and I might be charting and doing stuff, but I'll be like, all right, well, this is my time. It's over. But I don't always try. I don't always allow myself to give into that. I think it's really important. Moving and being outside for me is a really, really important thing. And that's one of the things we can do even now during the pandemic that, you can still social distance, you can still wear your mask. But honestly, I've really embraced my walks in my neighborhood I would say many evenings in the week, just getting outside, because this new world that we're living in with Zoom and with, all sorts of things, even with my practice, I'm not only seeing patients in person now, I'm doing telemedicine too. So there are times when I'm literally sitting on my couch seeing patients, not just in the office. So that's a big thing for me. But of course, in terms of when it comes to energy, yes, exercise is great. We've often talked, Cassie, I loved your suggestions about nutrition, like ways to kind of add nutrients and add sort of, energy little packs to our punch, instead of, the regular noodles, you can do zucchini noodles. I think that's great. Nutrition is a really big part of it. When I'm not eating well, I don't always feel well. And that goes the same with, any other excesses. So and also sleep. I would say that's the other thing too, for me, is sleep. I've noticed that during the pandemic, my sleep has been off. It's actually it's almost like my clock is off. I sometimes find myself staying up way later than I used to. And then I'm groggy in the morning. It's weird. And my patients have complained of this too. But this idea of, getting enough sleep, making sure that we're moving. Actually, fresh air makes a big difference, eating healthy, and of course, minimizing stress, which is not easy during these days, but it's really important. So, I try to focus on at least one of those to try to help give me a little boost if I can't do all of them, but it does help.
No, I love it. And I two things that I think are cool to highlight. One is there's a big study that I was seeing that just validated that how you see yourself dramatically impacts what your actual feeling, like how good you're actually feeling. So when you look in the mirror and you look run down, or you feel tired, or you're eating the wrong things, or you're overindulging, whatever, and you start to you internalize that self-perception in a really material way, which I think is it's one more validation in why it's so important to take good care of ourselves. And one quick little recipe thing that I've been doing a lot that has added a lot. I do love pasta, obviously, but I've been using chickpea noodles instead of regular noodles. I'll use chickpea rotini, throw some tomato sauce on there, and then toss in raw arugula. Yes, raw arugula into hot pasta is so delicious. Bright green, gorgeous color, adds a little crispness and a little juiciness, because sometimes chickpea pastas and alternative flour pastas can get a little dry. And it's one of my all-time favorite, super fast, very healthy and filling and colorful meals. So I know this is going to become a recipe exchange, by the way. So this of course, timing wise, is big cold season for a lot of people. It's just when everyone's prone to colds, everyone's constantly sniffling, obviously heightened expectations of that this year. What do you recommend to combat winter colds? Cassie, do you have ideas on that?
Definitely. I think, I see so many patients for colds during the winter. And I want to stress that there's really no cure, we'll say, for the common cold. So we don't treat colds with antibiotics. A lot of times it's really just supportive care. And supportive care can come in the form of many different over-the-counter medications. One of them being Mucinex all-in-one cold and flu, which I love, actually. So many of my patients take it. It will help prevent, worsening of congestion, cough, runny nose, all the things that we all hate to deal with when we have a cold. The only thing that I ask is that my patients use it as directed, of course. So make sure you're reading the back of the medication. And then if you're not getting better, or you feel like something you have a question about or a concern, contact your doctor. It's always important to stay in touch with your doctor.
And what about symptoms like a really annoying cough that just keeps you up all night? What about that? Products that we can use for that?
Yeah, cough is obviously a big problem. And a lot of people complain about cough, and they complain about congestion or excessive mucus production. One thing that has shown really good results in a lot of people is Mucinex DM. It lasts 12 hours, which is a very long time, but it contains two things that are very important. One, it contains guaifenesin, and that is important to loosen your mucus and to thin it out. Extremely helpful when you feel congested. And it also contains something called dextromethorphan. And why that's important is because that can help control your cough. So when you have these combination of these ingredients, you talk about controlling your cough, and you also talk about loosening and thinning your mucus. And that can go a long way in providing relief from some of those really irritating and nagging symptoms. And,
sometimes you get to the aisle and you don't know what to choose based on your symptoms. Is there a way to figure out exactly which medicine you should be taking based on your symptoms?
Yes. It can be complicated to figure out which is right. Everyone's not a doctor. It doesn't have a degree in pharmacy. So you're sitting in the aisle. You're not feeling great already. What should I choose? You really look for formulas that actually will address the symptoms. So you're looking for relief from particular symptoms. So you want the formula to match it. And if you go to mucinex.com, it actually has a really cool online tool that helps guide you to figure out which formula is best for what type of symptom you're trying to relieve.
Amazing. That makes it very straightforward. That's good. Okay, so let's circle up a little bit to, I think a lot of people with little kids and anyone who you're responsible for are paying extra close attention to some of the topics we've been talking about here today. Mental health in terms of just like keeping an eye on mood, keeping an eye on activity, engagement, all of that. And it's been a hard year for adults. It's been such a hard year for kids. What should we be looking out for this year when it does come to our kids? Jen, if you want to jump in on that, I think it's such an important topic for us to pay really close attention to.
No, I couldn't agree more. As a family doctor, I see people of all ages, and it's so interesting. I have some patients who are, say, in their teens or college years, or even, a middle school or what have you, and I'll say, okay, well, how are things going right now in terms of the pandemic and whatever? I have some young people that are like, oh my gosh, this is so tough, and I miss my friends, and it's tough learning online. And then honestly, I have some patients. I had a teenage patient a couple weeks ago who said, oh my God, Dr. Jen, I love it. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, I'm kind of a loner anyway. This works out perfectly for me. And and what it struck me is that, of course, just like adults, every child is different. And I think one of the most important things that we can do with the children in our lives, whether we're aunts or uncles or parents, is to check in with the kids to really see how they're doing. Every child is responding to this time very differently, and every child's needs are going to be different as well. Some kids are really struggling right now because of, as I mentioned, loneliness. They feel isolated. The idea of a pandemic actually is scary. My nieces run around saying, the corona, the corona, the corona, so, there's that. And then you got, some kids who might even be thriving in this environment. But, beside that, Daphne and everybody, schedules are changed. I have parents saying to me, of my kids in the office are saying, I don't know what to do. The baby's running around in a diaper all day. Their toys everywhere. They're on their screens all day long. I'm just giving, all of our routines are no longer our routines. And
So
one of the things I say about this, and I have to give a lot of my pediatrician colleagues a lot of credit about this, is this idea that where we as adults have to be flexible with ourselves and our surroundings during this pandemic, we have to be that way with our children and the children in our lives as well. Maybe this is a time where kids are on screens maybe a little bit more, or maybe differently than they used to be. And maybe it's okay if toys are in the living room floor more than they usually are. The point being is that a little bit of grace and flexibility, I think, is very helpful with young people, just as it is for those of us who are not so young, and really checking in with children and saying, okay, how are they doing? Is this working? Is this not? What's good? What's not? Of course, abiding by all the sort of, I don't want to say rules and restrictions, right? But, kids have those as well. They may not be able to play sports and do the recreation stuff. So I think that's probably one of the most important things I can advise, at least from my experience as a physician, is, checking in, really seeing where your kids are, what's working, what's not, I think is helpful.
I also want to add quickly that routine is important. And I know that our old routines, given remote learning, kids are not socializing the way we used to, but kids like the familiarity of routines. They establish some type of routine that they look forward to, what they can come to expect. Kids don't like last minute decisions. I've learned this. They don't like you to say, okay, we're leaving in half an hour. They don't like that. They want to know that today, this is what's on the docket. And they also want to feel like they have some input, like they help make the decision. Now, even though as a parent, you're ultimately making a decision, trying to incorporate your kids, feel like they have some ownership in it, can go a long way.
Yes, and it takes a very long time too when I let my kids have any say about what we're doing. But I think it's powerful and it's true that we thrive in habit, we thrive in routine, we thrive in predictability, we thrive in knowing what our steps are for the day. And Dr. Jen, exactly like what you said is so spot on in terms of the grace that as parents we have a really hard time giving ourselves, especially when we are like running on fumes a lot of the time, it feels like, and haggard and missing those moments during the day when you would have predictably been able to manage your life and keep your life intact, which honestly is the foundation of you being able to take such good care of everyone around you. And I think that's, this whole discussion has been about self-care. And I love that we're talking about self-care for kids, because I do think it's something that we forget. We forget kids are like little adults. We forget they are flexible and independent and individual the way adults are, and also human the way adults are. But I think, by losing sight of being able to take good care of ourselves, our kids pick up on that. Our kids feed on that. Our kids pick up on our anxiety, on our stress levels, on our feeling of frustration and overwhelm. And so, just to underscore and highlight why all the strategies we've been talking about are so critical to your happiness, yes, which should not be a secondary thought. It's a primary thought, because your happiness really creates the happiness of everyone around you. And in terms of giving the kids little manageable ways to check in with themselves, like, you're checking in with them, that's setting an example for them. Check in with themselves and say, today was a rough day, and to be allowed to vocalize that. My kids are 6 and under, but they have a lot of words, like use up way more than their daily allotment about. And I encourage them to feel empowered to not just express that, but like to volunteer. Like when, Dr. E, when you were saying that, and here I go back into the doctors, because it's like in my mind, it's so weird to call you by your first name, but here we go. When you were saying that it's a daily sort of object and a daily idea of letting us recalibrate. I think that's a really powerful thing for kids to pay attention to as well, and to change our tacks if we have to.
And Daphne, if I could just throw one thing real quickly, you had mentioned the exercise. Was it called what's that exercise that you would describe? So I had recently heard about that exercise, interestingly enough, and I heard about it through parents who were doing that exercise with their children, in addition to doing it themselves. Like this idea of, and I can't remember if you were talking about doing it with, your children are young, but this idea that not only is that a great activity at the end of the day to say, okay, hey, what went really well today? What, could I maybe change for the future? It's also, as you're talking about agency and empowerment for kids, that can be a really great activity, especially during these times of, kind of craziness, that activity at the end of the day.
I love that. And I love the idea of also creating you'd referenced before, Jen, about creating new routines and creating new traditions, but also creating new routines. And as Ian was saying, like, my kids look forward to the most basic thing, pizza nights on Fridays. Like it can be such simple, not adding stress to your plate. I would never advocate for parents taking on even more. And sometimes when it's like, be more creative, think of this idea. It's like, yes, absolutely lean into that if you are feeling strong to do that and you're going to enjoy it. But if it's going to add more stress to your plate, you don't need that right now. Take advantage of manageable and easy ways to create really fun new rhythms and routines for the whole family in a way that I think does build, your kids' ability to read empowerment and stability from you, which is honestly, at the end of the day, as we learn on Mom Brain all the time, like the most important things for kids to absorb. I know I want to make sure that we do get to cover this, because I think some families are confused by it. Even families who are observing really strict quarantine and staying really close knit, they're still seeing their kids get sick in some cases. Why do you think that's happening? Cassie, do you want to jump in on that?
Well, I think it depends, right, on your situation. And we all try our best, but there's still times when we go out, like we talked about earlier, to the grocery store or to pick something up from a friend's house, even if you're picking it up from outside. Viruses and bacteria live on surfaces also. So it's not just direct contact with humans that can spread illness. And then depending on, a patient's predisposed conditions, like, are they immunosuppressed? Do they have diabetes? Do they have risk factors for illnesses already? So, that's another way that you can get sick more easily than the average person. And there's allergic conditions too. So especially because we're spending a lot more time outside, some parents, I'll see a lot of kids in the emergency department with symptoms that parents believe are due to a bacteria or a virus, and they're not always. Sometimes they're allergic responses to different things. So, there's a number of ways in which you can see illness still, even if you're being really careful. And it's hard to be perfect, of course.
The other thing, I was going to say, the other thing about kids, and why are they still getting sick? Kids are not perfect. No one's perfect. And so the idea that kids are always going to wear their mask properly, that they're going to sanitize or wash their hands all the time, even though we're taking them out. I mean, you can't 24/7 know everything your child is doing. And I think what's happening is, and some kids, by the way, are still going to school. Some kids are going to daycare, they're really young kids. And while a lot of these kids tend to be asymptomatic, by the way, it doesn't mean that they're not infectious. So they're asymptomatic, yet they can still infect others in the household. And I think that what parents have to realize is that just because when we talk about all the bad outcomes and consequences of COVID, we tend to talk about adults and older people, that kids are vulnerable too, and that kids also can participate in this chain of infection.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in that same vein, that kids are in some ways very comparable to the adults, and in some ways they have their own issues and their own protections, which is good in some cases. I'd love to hear as a closeout, if you guys we talked a little bit about how nutrition and physicality are so important for physical health, of course, but for mental health for adults. And I'd love if you guys want to share each maybe your favorite either recipe for kids to eat good, healthy food, or favorite activity that even if you're observing, social distancing and everything, that you could still do with your kids. That's a great sort of like physical boost, endorphin boost, get those happy hormones flowing, something to, have your kids get through these winter blues as well.
I'll kick it off. Yeah, one thing I had that was a lot of fun was when I was creating one of my books, there were a lot of smoothies in them. And one thing I realized was my kids enjoyed making the smoothies and creating the recipes. So I would say, okay, guys, let's do a smoothie. And they would say, let's add this, let's add that. So it really became kind of a family situation. And the kids loved the idea that they could create. In fact, I gave both of them a name. I named their smoothie in the book so they could see it was their smoothie. But kids like to create. And if they can create something and then taste it and then like it, there's such a sense of accomplishment for them. Like, oh my goodness, like this is good. So I don't recommend, grass smoothies, but I recommend sweet smoothies, sweet from obviously the fruit. But while there's sugar in fruit, there's also a lot of other, what I call the sugar package, which is minerals and vitamins and nutrients. But I really think that doing something like having a day where a morning or afternoon where you make a cool smoothie and they get to name it and put all the ingredients together, that's a lot of fun.
Of it.
I think for
Jen,
me,
you want to add?
Yeah, so I don't have any kids. I live by myself, but my nieces are a big part of my life, and they live away from me. So they live in Atlanta, and I used to see them really, really frequently. I'd travel a lot before the pandemic. And this is not quite the same thing and not exactly what you were asking, but I think something that's really helped me and my nieces stay connected and close during this pandemic, which has actually it's been very important for us. I miss them, and I know that I think they feel the same way. We hope they feel the same way. But sometimes what we'll do is, in addition to our normal like Zoom calls, or rather, FaceTime calls, sometimes what I'll do is like, I'll call and my sister-in-law or my niece will just like, honestly, and this is not creative or anything, but they'll just set the phone up on the couch or like a counter. And like, it'll be like for a couple of hours, I just feel like I'm in their presence. It may seem kind of corny and kind of strange. They're zooming around on their tricycles, riding around in the kitchen and putting, making play this, but just even hearing them play as though I'm almost a part of their household is a way that we've been able to stay connected. They can hear me typing on my computer. Again, it sort of feels a little strange and silly when I mention it, but it actually has been very important to us as a family, where we feel connected even though we're not. It kind of feels like when I used to visit them all the time and was right there with them. So that's just something we do.
I love that. And I don't think it sounds trivial at all. Like so much of those strong, consistent bonds, especially you said they're riding on tricycles, like your nieces sound little, that it's just the consistency of that presence. It's just your person in the room. And that's such an awesome way for you to get to soak it in with them and for them to get to just be in your presence, even though they're not physically there with you. I love that. And it keeps you company. It's nice.
It does.
Yeah. Cassie, did you want to add something? I didn't want to stop you.
I was just going to say pizza nights, which you brought up, and I don't have kids either, but my husband and I
don't need kids for pizza night. It works.
You can add the colors like we talked about before. You can make a crust that's made of cauliflower these days. It's just the options are endless. So it's a great way to bond.
The customization piece is very, I think Ian had said in the beginning, kids want to be in control. They want to get to make some choices too. And The customization piece has always been my most successful strategy. People ask me constantly, how do you raise healthy eaters? How do you help picky eaters adopt new eating habits? And my grandmother, who has 6 kids, always said, don't let them resist you more than the food. And I think that's so true. Like, I put things on the table. I invite my kids / tell them, try everything once. Beyond that, for one bite, you don't have to eat anything beyond that. But it's really just, I want to raise adventurous eaters. I want to raise kids who aren't afraid of their food if it's not something they're familiar with. And slowly but surely, like, giving them the agency of being able to take things off the communal plate and stuff like that. Within our family. It has been a really successful strategy just to give them a little more independence, which I think has always been helpful. First of all, a giant thank you to Dr. Jen, Dr. Cassie, Dr. Ian. This conversation has been awesome. I definitely learned a few things, more than a few things. And a big thank you, of course, to PureWow and Mucinex for bringing us together and hosting this great event. Thank you guys all for joining us. I hope you guys learned some good things. Of course, stay safe, stay healthy, have a wonderful night, and a happy and healthy holiday season. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Happy holidays, guys.
Happy holidays.